Wherever there's momentum, more momentum follows, and what left behind gets left behind more. I mean, it's almost the curse of late stage capitalism. Those who have just get exponentially more. And I'm worried that the the growth at the bottom of the economic pyramid, is not fast enough, and that it almost feels like at some point it creates a singularity, where the divide just gets too big. So I feel a sense of urgency to bring solutions like Inlu that is not a redistribution of wealth. It grows the entire pie, but it grows it faster at the bottom than at the top. So over time, it rectifies and balances, the economy.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Up Next. Today, I get a chance to sit down and talk with a new friend I recently met, Cobus Truter, over in South Africa. How are you?
Very well in yourself.
Doing well. Well, now, Cobus, are you in, would you say it's Jakarta? I mean, not Jakarta, Johannesburg, or are you in Pretoria?
I'm currently calling from our head office at FinTech Campus in Pretoria.
Very, very good. Now, for those who are listening, they've never been to Jakarta, I mean, to South Africa before. How would you describe Pretoria? What would you say about Pretoria?
Probably the best weather in the world. That's what most people say when they're here. I'm quite used to it. I grew up here.
Yeah.
But if I do visit other countries, the first thing I start to miss is the weather. It's
Yeah.
nice, and it's low humidity, lots of sunshine, friendly people. Not hard to make friends. So yeah, good place to live.
Yeah. And so you mentioned you grew up in Pretoria?
Yes, that's correct. I was born in Johannesburg, but my parents moved to Pretoria when I was quite young, so spent most of my life here.
Yeah. So as we were talking today, you're sitting in your headquarters. Cobus, what does your company do? Talk to me a little bit about your work journey.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm in the real estate development space in Africa. If I got to give it a overarching topic, but more specifically, the main company that we're building out now, it's called Indlu Living. It
Mhm.
is focused on funding landowners on the African continent to develop their properties. So Africa is booming in terms of demographics. So population growth, urbanization is fueling the growth of cities. And the challenge is that the authorities often can't keep up with the growth, leading to sprawling informal settlements
Yeah.
in cities. And so what we do is we recognize the fact that this urbanization is going to happen. This densification is unstoppable. And how do we influence the growth of the city at a granular level by helping this growth that would otherwise be informal to formalize? So that means coming in with loans so that rental stock can be built properly according to standard. And then we also have a software as a service, a vertically integrated platform that facilitates the entire development process from your pre-development design straight through the construction to the property management. So
Wow.
um, those are the two main tools: funding and systems, that we then use to support local landowners to grow and develop their portfolio.
Wow, very, very good. So, Cobus, how did you get started in industry? I mean, have you always worked in the real estate industry, or how did you get involved in this?
So I think the story starts very early on. One of my co-founders, Werner Creer, who's currently the COO of the company, we go way back. I mean, to primary school. So we've always been very entrepreneurial, doing all sorts of crazy schemes and learning a lot, and paying a lot of school fees. So I've got a long list of ventures that me and him tried over the years. And so I
Yeah,
think that's where our entrepreneurial sort of uh, start is from. Um, Later on, I studied industrial engineering at the University of Pretoria, which exposed me to um, just systems thinking, building
yeah,
ecosystems.
yeah,
And that resonated with me a lot. During the same time while I was studying, I was volunteering at a NGO, a Christian NGO that is linked to the church that I was attending at that point, that was doing on entrepreneurial development work in the townships. So I had the entrepreneurial spirit that's just there. I had the engineering side that was forming, and then I also had a growing awareness of the big inequality that exists in South Africa, and got convicted that I would like to spend my life in terms of uh, uh, poverty alleviation. So those
yeah,
were three
yeah,
different
yeah, yeah,
things in
yeah,
my
yeah.
mind. Then in my final year of studies, I came across a book. It was part of a research paper I was doing about microfinance. Actually, two books. The one is called The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid by C.K. Prahalat, and the other one is Banker for the Poor by Muhammad Yongas. And both of these books were really catalytical to me, because it showed me a path where I could, use my entrepreneurial DNA and the more formal engineering principles I was learning to achieve what I felt I was being
Yeah.
called to. So that's where it all came together. So we founded me and Werner, always me and him. We founded a company called Empiric, which is straight out of university, and since we've been joined, well, we're almost 100 people now. But we've added in some two
Yeah.
more key co-founders at that point, and the goal of Empiric was to basically just identify broken down and deficient market structures in the African continent that both causes and perpetuates poverty, and then come up with solutions to those problems. And
Mm,
out
mhm,
of
mhm.
Empiric, then a couple of things was born, and I think the most notable one is Inlu. That's my main focus at this point.
Yeah, yeah, I love that idea. So even with your work at Inlu, Cobus, is what is it that you know now that you probably didn't know when you first started? You said, "Man, this is something I'm learning that I had to pivot, change your direction, all of that." What is it that you're learning now that you didn't know when you first started?
Yo, I mean, that's I can do a long list of things that I learned along the way. I think a couple of key things would be one, you know, understand the basics before you start to innovate. Get the 101 right. Make sure you understand why the industry is set up the way it is before you start disrupting it. I think that's a good one. um,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
uh,
yeah.
we sort of started coming up with innovative ideas before we really got the 101 down. which I think on the one hand was a blessing, because it in that ignorance there is sort of innovation that comes out of that. But I think there's better ways to go about it. I think you can still dream up new structures for a market, while having the humility to say, well, I gotta get the basics undergoing. So that's I would have saved a lot of school fees
Hmm.
if I did that. Also, in terms of selling, I think there's that verse that says, man may set his path, but God determines the steps. So be I think I've oversold sort of the vision in the past, and then I find that when God takes us in another direction, and now I've created expectations that's hard to pivot. So in terms of, be honest with where you are in the journey, differentiate between what is a real next step and what the vision is, where you see it
Hmm.
going.
Hmm.
I mean, I
Hmm.
think you can be transparent, you can communicate that, but don't make commitments against that. And I think be honest on where you are in the journey, because that allows others to join in, and also know what they're getting into, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
those are two of the lessons. I think there's things that that created a lot of strength in our group that I only almost realized at hindsight, and that is the importance of a team that it's always easier to build on your strengths, than to try and improve the areas in which you're lacking. So it's better to partner where you've got blind spots, and
yeah,
that is something that God brought together for us, a team of four guys that's got very diverse skill sets, very diverse personalities. But in hindsight, I can see that has created a lot of um, staying power, and gave us a lot of grit,
yeah,
and where one of us got stuck, the others found the way. So
yeah, yeah,
I would definitely encourage, like your core team is, you know, first figure out who you want to work with, then decide what ideas you want to pursue.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Cobus, I love your thinking about it. And even I see this in ministry, that there are many times ministry leaders or pastors feel like, okay, I am called by God. I have to do everything well. I have to lead everything. And hearing you talk, a lot of times, God has gifted us in different ways, that there are certain strengths that He has given us. And the more we admit, hey, I'm not good at that, it's okay. But then finding people who are good in those areas by having the security in yourself to let go through some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so even with a lot of times as you're talking as well too, you're making key decisions. A person who's sitting here listening to you in our conversation would say to you, Cobus, how do you know when to pivot from a direction? Because sometimes we have a best laid plans and it really is hard to pivot. How do you know when to make a decisions? How do you know that, Cobus, in terms of the decisions you have to make, not only at work, but also in life as well too?
Yeah, yeah, and we had to pivot a couple of times, and I must say, as the ship has gotten bigger, when you start up, you've got a pirate ship. It's easy to change direction, because the captain is in there with the crew, and
Yeah.
we're all swashbuckling and finding our way. So pivoting is easy early on, but as you are sort of parking the pirate ship and start to build your fleet, the turning radius becomes bigger, and the impact of pivoting becomes a lot harder. and because now you're getting systems, you're getting staff, you're getting
Yeah.
investment. So that's just what I've seen. Like every time we've had to pivot, it became harder to do that, and it became more risky to do it. So I would encourage people to early on, you know, uh, work hard in terms of understanding where the fundamental constraints and the fundamental building blocks is, because we've had some, let's say, fundamental constraints that we've sort of, because we were small, we were able to work around them, and um, uh, we were able to get by without addressing some of those major structural or fundamental blockers. Work hard early on to see what that is. To try and identify that and build a business model that can deal with that. So I think one of the lessons I've learned is, take those things, write them down, pray about them, and you need a business model. You need a business model that is not gonna hit a ceiling because of some structural limitation. Understand what those are and build your business model to account for that. We've had three key ones in our journey, which mostly related to the challenges involved with moving from a mostly informal economy to a more formalized economy. So it is dealing with regulatory, issues. It was regulatory and compliance issues. It's dealing with the way the capital markets are structured.
Hmm.
Those are things that don't be naive. You're gonna run into those things, and prepare for them. On the other hand, you don't quite know where the real roadblocks is up until you're
Yeah.
right up
Yeah.
right up against them. So it's a journey of faith. Hindsight's 2020. I could see how, looking back, how we could have saved ourselves a lot of pain, but yeah, I'm not so sure. How I would have avoided it. Get started. It's a
Yeah.
journey of faith. Trust God at every point. Pray. But if from a professional point of view, try and understand the bottlenecks best you can, and understand what the rolling effect is going to be of the bottlenecks. If this
Yeah.
bottlenecks gets, what's the next one?
Yeah.
Start thinking about that next one, because you could be pivoting maybe a little bit now, and you might have a much clearer trajectory.
Yeah. Yeah. Cobus, if there is anything that results from this interview, it's that if you ever do a talk or you ever do your topic, your theme should be pirate ships versus fleets. That should be the name of your talk.
I I'm way more comfortable as a pirate captain than an admiral. But yeah, I mean, you gotta
Yeah.
you gotta grow, and you gotta go where God points you. So I do have a couple of lessons in that regard.
So if I was to ask you, okay, how does your faith integrate with what you do? How has God designed you? How has God placed you to where? What would you say to me?
Um, well, I think it's everything. I think it's the motivation to do what I do, and it is the engine that sustains the work. So it's everything. I think there's been some serious crucibles that we needed to carry through this work, and I don't think there's easier ways to make money, probably, than to do what we're doing, because fundamentally we're trying to solve hard problems. And so if I didn't have the motivation to tackle this in the first place. I think yeah, I just would have gone into more, maybe regular real estate development, or I don't know, banking. It would have been a lot more boring. So, but I wouldn't have had my pain threshold would have been a lot
Mm,
lower, I
hmm.
think, because there wouldn't be motivation to say, like the parable of the talents. That's been a big motivation for me. I became aware of the fact that God gave me certain talents relating to problem solving and leadership, that could be useful for the kingdom. And I want to turn 1 into 10, and the motivation to do that, comes through faith, and also, that's what sustains you through those difficult pivots, through those trenches, and it gives you hope, because one day everything's going to be made new. All the problems that we're faced with, they're going to go away. We can work in victory in a certain sense, even though we are really feeling the thorns and thistles. So there's a certain optimism, that comes from that I think would be hard to get through merely worldly motivations. I would certainly be busy solving other types of problems. I think you can get secular motivation as well, but I think it, you will you will not the value that the kingdom places on the value system of the kingdom differs from the value system of the world. What are you trying to maximize? Your earthly treasures or your heavenly treasures? What's the ultimate balance sheet that you're going for? So I think the types of challenges would have been a lot different if I wasn't motivated by my faith. And I talk about me,
Yeah.
but definitely also for the rest of our executive team. That's been the driver.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Very good. Cobus, I mean, even for you were talking about, especially you and your first partner, you guys experimented, came up with so many ideas. As you look back, what was one idea that you guys tried in your early days when you guys were in university or something like that that just didn't work out? And you look back and says, "Oh my gosh, what kind of idea was this?"
There's some crazy ones. We we built foam machines that was meant to be used at branding and marketing events. And
Yeah.
we designed this foam machine to only take a certain type of foaming liquid that we would supply. So the whole idea was we would build these machines, sell them cheaply, and then we have the foam solution that only works with this machine. So to get that right was difficult, but it ended up that we had to test the foam for allergens, and so it was meant for kids mostly, just to say. So I had to test it on my small brothers, and most of them got out of it with skin disorders, that I don't feel very proud of. So I mean, it ranges from that to selling science experiments to doing rock concerts,
Yeah.
which actually, from a business point of view, made sense, but it didn't sit well with our Christian convictions and where we were going. So yeah, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Every little bit contributed to to the story in some bizarre way or another.
Yeah. And Cobus, in some sense, don't you think you have to fail at many things and you start realizing, okay, that worked well, that didn't work well, all of those things. And it just takes a bunch of different ideas.
Yeah, so I think you need that, like I said, that sense of optimism that somewhere there's a path, somewhere there's an opportunity, because I see a lot of people getting discouraged quickly, with one or two failures, they get discouraged. It's really necessary to be able to get up, try again, try again. It's everybody says this, but it's because it's true. You have to pivot until the stars align.
Yeah.
And there's providentially God has designed the blueprint to work like that. That we learn by trying. If I look at my kids, it's obvious, I can see that's what they need to do. They need to get on that bicycle and try and try and try. They cannot sit on the side and figure it out and then
Yeah.
get on the bike and ride. They need to try, and that's the same with us. And God is a good father. He's standing there making sure we're not gonna run into the traffic or off the ditch. He's there. He's there guiding us, and it gives us a freedom to try. The gospel gives us a freedom to try and fail. Because at the end of the day, our value sits in the completed work of Jesus. So there's nothing we need to create for ourselves. So we're fine. You're fine. So that liberates you to take risks and to learn, and that process brings such a lot of invaluable lessons along the way.
Yeah, yeah. Cobus, even as you talked about a lot of times how things have changed, even the industry that you're in, what's the biggest change as you work in the area of real estate in Pretoria or even South Africa as a whole?
um well, there's been the changes that we've been actively driving is bridging the segregation between the formal and informal economies in South Africa.
Yeah.
If you read about GDP stats or any economic metric, it refers to the formal economy. And so I've learned that that the informal economy is up to about 40% of the whole. And it's brought about a lot of change in the way um, institutions view the informal settlement. So I see that change taking place, and I mean we can't take all the credit for that. There's a lot of others that's working in that space as well. But I've seen an awareness of the opportunity in that space, a move away from just relying on corporates to get things done in the country. So I can see how there's a paradigm shift happening, and I'm thankful that we were able to be there early on, so that we can, if you want to catch a wave, you got to start pedaling before it's on top of and so I'm thankful that we could be there as a sort of a bridge or a adapter,
Yeah.
between the informal and the formal economy. But I see that shifting. Banks are now looking at this market. Developers
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the gig economy. Technology has made a lot of that possible. Like, because you need to. The problem with the informal economy, it's very granular. So you need to aggregate things to get scale to make it work. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
on any one individual informal opportunity, it's too small to do anything with it. But you can use technology to aggregate, which makes it a real force. And so I think technology has done a lot to uh, uh, create access to this market.
Got it. Very good. Cobus, as we wrap up, one last question for you. You said that you grew up in Pretoria. As you look upon your city, growing up in the city ever since you were a little boy, what is the one thing that you are encouraged by when you look at Pretoria? But what is one concern that you have that has grown over the last couple of years? What would you say to that?
Um, I see the so I mean South Africa is still scarred by the especially from a real estate point of view, from the land acts from the apartheid era, so there's was deep segregation, so I am encouraged to see how that is, fading over time, especially in the minds of people. Those barriers are being broken down, and there's a lot more goodwill, in all directions. That's definitely encouraging. What concerns me is that, the power law, mass begets mass. Wherever there's momentum, more momentum follows, and what left behind gets left behind more. I mean, it's almost the curse of late stage capitalism. Those who have just get exponentially more. And I'm worried that the growth at the bottom of the economic pyramid, is not fast enough, and that it almost feels like at some point it creates a singularity, where the divide just gets too big. So I feel a sense of urgency to bring solutions like Inlu, that is not a redistribution of wealth. It grows the entire pie, but it grows it faster at the bottom than at the top. So over time, it rectifies and balances, the economy. So South Africa has the highest Gini coefficient in the world. That's not a stat to be proud of. So how do we use the wealth that's at the top to build even more wealth faster at the bottom? Um, I'm both encouraged by it, but I am concerned because I think that is something that's going to happen a lot more, um, a lot faster than it's currently
Mhm.
happening.
Very, very good. Cobus Truter, thank you very much for finding some time to talk today for the last couple minutes. So thank you so much for making time.
Thank you, Tommy. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, now, Cobus, are you on? I know you're on LinkedIn, but are you on social media? Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
I'm staying off the social media as far as I can. To be quite honest, I am on LinkedIn, and you can reach me through the channels of Indu Living, through the website. A message to the info at will reach me if it's addressed to me.
You got it,
But
Cobus.
I'm,
Thank you
I'm
for making
trying to
time
be
today.
as private as I can. Thank you.
Understood. Understood. We'll talk soon. Okay.
Appreciate it.